It was supposed to be a quiet evening in the neighborhood, but everything changed in an instant. A young black girl, born deaf, was walking home after visiting a friend when flashing lights pulled up behind her. She couldn't hear the shouts, couldn't understand the commands, and in her confusion, she reached for her phone to type a message. What happened next sent shockwaves through the community. Officers, blinded by prejudice and impatience, reacted in the worst way possible. Neighbors rushed out, horrified, recording the chaos as the sirens drowned out the cries of witnesses. Word spread quickly, and within minutes, the girl's father arrived at the scene. What no one expected was who he truly was, a man with deep ties to the FBI, respected for his years of service, and known for never backing down when it came to justice. As he stepped forward, the same officers who moments earlier had acted with reckless authority suddenly froze, realizing their careers might not survive the truth that was about to come out. But this wasn't just about one night or one mistake. It was about years of systemic bias and the cost of ignoring basic humanity. With the cameras still rolling and the community demanding answers, the stage was set for a confrontation that would end careers and rewrite the future. And it was only the beginning. The crowd around the scene grew larger, voices rising with anger and disbelief. Some shouted at the officers, others tried to comfort the girl as she lay still, her phone beside her like unfinished words waiting to be read. People whispered about how she had always been gentle, how she loved sketching on her notebook and helping her neighbors with small chores. The fact that she was deaf wasn't a secret to anyone in the community, except to the officers who now stood defensive, trying to justify their actions. Her father's presence changed the air instantly. Dressed in plain clothes, he didn't need a badge to command attention. The whispers began. He works with the FBI. Those who knew him understood his history of uncovering corruption, of exposing wrongs others tried to bury. Yet here he was, staring at the very people sworn to protect. Realizing the danger his daughter had faced, not from strangers but from those carrying authority, the officers avoided his eyes, their hands twitching near radios, their confidence slipping as the weight of what had just happened began to dawn on them. The community pressed closer, phones recording every second. This wasn't just about a tragic mistake, anymore it was about accountability. And as the father stepped closer, tension thickened, because everyone knew he wasn't here to stay silent. The officers stood in a tight line, their radios buzzing with nervous chatter, but no one dared to speak first. The father's eyes swept over each of them, sharp and unflinching. He wasn't just a parent in grief, he was a man who had seen cover-ups, seen reports twisted to protect the powerful, and he knew the signs when officers were scrambling to build a story. Behind him, the community kept filming, their voices breaking through the night with demands for justice. Among the crowd was a young neighbor who had grown up with the girl, clutching the sketchbook she had dropped earlier. He held it high, showing the pages filled with drawings of hands signing words, proof of how she communicated. "She couldn't hear you," he shouted, his voice cracking. "She never could." His words hit hard, slicing through the excuses already forming in the officers' minds. But inside the police cars, other officers were arriving, some unfamiliar faces who didn't carry the same panic in their eyes. One leaned against the hood, quietly watching, as if waiting to see which way the tide would turn. Rumors swirled that body cameras had captured everything, but no one knew if those recordings would ever see daylight. The father stepped closer. To the officers, the weight of his FBI past hanging in the silence. He didn't raise his voice, yet the question hung in the air heavier than sirens. Asterisk, do you really want to bury the truth tonight? Asterisk, the night grew heavier, every sound amplified, the hum of idling engines, the clicking of phone cameras, the uneven breaths of officers who no longer felt in control. The father stood his ground, the crowd behind him swelling in courage. Each second carried a tension that felt like it might snap. The officers shifted, their hands tightening around belts, but their confidence had drained away. They weren't facing a quiet family anymore. They were facing a community united, and a man with the power to dismantle their lies. From the distance, sirens wailed again, louder this time, signaling more backup on the way. Some in the crowd whispered nervously, afraid the scene would turn darker. Yet the father didn't move. He raised his phone, made a single call, and the change was immediate. The officers closest to him recognized the authority on the other end of that line, and panic flickered across their faces. One of the 8 younger officers tried to speak, his words tumbling out, but the father silenced him with a look that carried both grief and fire. The girl's sketchbook lay open on the pavement, the unfinished signs seeming to echo the truth louder than any voice could. The tension reached its peak as headlights appeared at the edge of the street. More vehicles pulled up, but this time, it wasn't clear whose side they were on. The air held its breath, waiting for the break that was about to change everything. The new set of headlights cut through the darkness, their beams sweeping over the tense crowd. But when the doors opened, it wasn't more local police. Stepping out it was a pair of unmarked vehicles, their passengers moving with quiet precision. Suits instead of uniforms, calm instead of panic. Whispers spread quickly. Federal agents. The officers on the scene stiffened, realizing this had spiraled far beyond their control. The father didn't flinch. He knew these men, and the timing wasn't an accident. His call had been answered faster than anyone expected, but the real twist came when one of the agents didn't approach Jim instead. He walked directly to the nearest officer, pulling a small folder from his coat. The papers inside weren't about this night alone. They held past complaints, hidden reports, and names tied to misconduct that had been buried until now. Suddenly, this wasn't only about his daughter, it was about a pattern of corruption, reaching deeper than anyone in the crowd imagined. The officers shifted uneasily, some exchanging glances, as if secrets were being dragged into the open. The community leaned in closer, phones raised higher, sensing history unfolding before their eyes. But before a word could be explained, the sound of more sirens roared closer. This time, no one knew if it was help or a final attempt to silence the truth. The stakes had just doubled, and the night was far from over. The roar of approaching sirens grew until the street was flooded with flashing lights. For a tense moment, no one knew which side the new arrivals would take. The crowd held its breath, phones recording every second, the air heavy with fear and hope. Then the vehicles stopped, and high-ranking officials stepped out, not to back the local officers, but to stand beside the federal agents. The shift was immediate. The officers who had acted recklessly earlier dropped their shoulders, their authority slipping away in front of everyone. The father stepped forward, his voice calm but cutting through the noise. He demanded the release of the body cam footage, right there, in front of the community. The federal agents nodded, signaling they had already secured it. A screen was pulled up from one of the vehicles, and the footage played clear evidence that his daughter had done nothing wrong. The crowd erupted, some in tears, others shouting for accountability. The officers' faces drained of color as their own actions betrayed them on the screen. Careers collapsed in real time, but just as the community felt justice arriving, the unexpected twist came. One of the federal agents whispered something to the father, handing him another sealed file. His expression changed, not relief, but shock. This wasn't just about these officers. The file hinted at something larger, a network of corruption tied far beyond this small town. The night had delivered justice, but it also opened a door to a bigger battle waiting ahead. The street slowly quieted as the truth settled over everyone. The girl, still recovering, was lifted into an ambulance with her father walking close behind, his presence steady and protective. The community stood together, no longer just witnesses, but voices of change. They had seen with their own eyes how prejudice and impatience nearly cost an innocent life, and how courage and unity turned the tide. The officers involved were escorted away, their badges taken, their powers stripped under the same lights they once used to intimidate. For many in the crowd, it felt like the first time accountability had truly arrived at their doorstep. The sealed file remained in the father's hands, a reminder that the fight wasn't over. Though justice had been served in this moment, he understood the path ahead would be long, filled with deeper truths that needed to be uncovered. Still, for tonight, the focus was his daughter safe, alive, and surrounded by a community that refused to let her story be buried. As the last of the flashing lights faded, neighbors lingered, promising to protect each other, to speak louder, and to never stay silent when injustice tried to hide in plain sight. What happened that night wasn't just about one family. It became a lesson in strength, accountability, and the power of standing together for what's right.